The rain hammered down on Isaac Pemberton's shoulders as he urged his horse through the muddy forest path, cursing himself for not seeking shelter an hour ago when the first drops had fallen. And that was when he saw her, a massive figure hunched beneath the skeletal branches of an ancient oak, her green skin gleaming wet in the storm, her broad shoulders curved protectively over something small and precious. Isaac's hand went instinctively to the sword at his hip, years of military training making the movement automatic even as his rational mind caught up with what he was seeing. An orc. A female orc, by the look of her, alone in the woods during a storm that was quickly becoming dangerous. His horse whinnied nervously, sensing the tension in his body, but Isaac held the reins steady and watched. The orc woman shifted slightly, and Isaac caught a glimpse of what she was protecting, a bundle of cloth, and from within it, the unmistakable wail of an infant. The sound cut through the storm like a knife, high and desperate and utterly human. Isaac felt his chest tighten. He had seen many things during his years serving on the frontier, but this was something entirely unexpected. Thunder cracked overhead, and the orc woman looked up, rain streaming down her face. Her eyes, a startling amber color, locked onto his, and for a moment neither of them moved. Isaac could see the exhaustion etched into every line of her body, the way her arms trembled as she clutched the crying infant closer to her chest. She was soaked through, her simple leather clothing offering little protection against the storm, and even from this distance he could see she was shivering. "Please," she called out, her voice rough but clear even over the rain. "I mean no harm." Isaac should have ridden on. Every instinct born from years of living on the frontier, of serving in skirmishes against orc raiding parties, told him to keep moving. Orcs were dangerous. They were the enemy. They had killed good men he had served alongside, had razed villages and left families homeless. But that crying child that changed everything. He dismounted slowly, keeping his movements deliberate and non-threatening, though he kept his hand near his weapon. "What are you doing out here?" he called back. The orc woman looked down at the bundle in her arms, then back up at him. "I found this child," she said. "On the road, maybe 3 miles from here, abandoned. The wagon was overturned, everyone dead or fled. I heard crying." "And you took it," Isaac said, taking a few steps closer. He could see her more clearly now. She was tall, easily 6.5 feet, with the characteristic green skin and small tusks that protruded just slightly over her lower lip. Her black hair hung in wet ropes down her back, and her pointed ears were pierced with simple copper rings. Despite her fearsome appearance, there was something almost gentle in the way she held the child. "It is not mine," she said firmly, "but I will not leave it." Those words hit Isaac harder than he expected. He thought of all the stories he had heard about orcs, about their supposed cruelty and savageness, about how they were monsters incapable of mercy. Yet here was one, soaked to the bone and obviously exhausted, refusing to abandon a human child even though keeping it put her at enormous risk. "How long have you been out here?" Isaac asked. "Since midday," she replied. The baby's cries were getting weaker now, which worried Isaac more than the loud wailing had. "I tried to find shelter, but the storm came faster than I expected." Isaac looked up at the darkening sky. The storm was only going to get worse, and night would fall soon. He knew these woods. There was nothing for miles except his own homestead, about an hour's ride west. The orc woman would never make it anywhere safe on foot before nightfall, and that baby would not survive the night exposed to this weather. He was going to regret this. He knew he was going to regret this. "My farm is an hour from here," he heard himself say. "You can shelter there until the storm passes." The orc woman stared at him as though he had spoken in a foreign tongue. "You would shelter me? An orc? I would shelter that baby, Isaac corrected, though he was not entirely sure that was the complete truth. Come on before this gets worse. She hesitated for only a moment before nodding and rising to her feet. Isaac was startled by her full height. She towered over him by at least half a foot, and her shoulders were broader than any woman's he had ever seen, human or otherwise. But she moved with surprising grace as she carefully adjusted the baby in her arms, making sure the child was as protected as possible from the rain. "Can you walk?" Isaac asked. "I can walk," she said with a note of pride that made it clear she found the question almost insulting. Isaac remounted his horse and set a pace that was quick but manageable. The orc woman kept up without complaint, her long legs eating up the distance with steady strides. He glanced back at her several times during that long, wet hour, and each time she was still there, still walking with that same determined set to her jaw, still holding the baby close. By the time they reached his farm, full darkness had fallen and the storm had reached its peak. Rain lashed the modest homestead, a sturdy two-room cabin with an attached barn and a fenced pasture where Isaac's chickens and goats huddled miserably in their shelter. Isaac quickly guided them toward the barn rather than the house, thinking it might be easier for both of them if the orc woman had some space to herself. "Wait here," he said, dismounting and pushing open the barn door. "Let me get a lantern lit." The interior of the barn was dry and smelled of hay and animals. Isaac's milk cow, Bessie, looked up from her stall with mild curiosity as he lit the oil lamp hanging from a hook near the door. The warm glow pushed back the darkness, revealing neat stacks of hay, farming equipment, and several empty stalls. The orc woman stepped inside, and Isaac saw her shoulders sag with relief as she escaped the rain. She was shivering badly now, and the baby's cries had faded to weak whimpers. "Here," Isaac said, grabbing an armful of clean horse blankets from a storage chest. "These are not much, but they are dry." She took them with a nod of thanks and immediately began wrapping the baby in the warmest one. Isaac finally got a clear look at the child, a little girl, he thought, probably no more than 6 months old. Her face was red from crying and cold, but she seemed otherwise unharmed. "She needs to be fed," the orc woman said quietly, "and kept warm." "I have goat's milk in the house," Isaac said, "and I can build up the fire. But first," he looked at her directly. "What is your name?" She met his eyes, and he saw surprise flicker there. "Grusha," she said after a moment. "Isaac," he replied. "Isaac Pemberton, this is my land. You are welcome to stay until the storm passes and the baby is well enough to travel." "Where will I take her?" Grusha asked, and there was something raw in her voice, something almost despairing. "No orc clan will take a human child, and no human settlement will accept a child delivered by an orc." Isaac had not thought that far ahead, and the reality of the situation was beginning to settle over him like a weight. Grusha was right. She had trapped herself in an impossible situation the moment she picked up that baby. An orc with a human child would be killed on sight by most human settlements, and her own people would view her as a traitor or worse. "We will figure something out," Isaac said, with more confidence than he felt. "But right now, we need to get that baby warm and fed. Come to the house." Grusha hesitated. "Your home is dry and warm," Isaac interrupted. "And if anyone has a problem with an orc being in there, they can take it up with me after the storm passes and the baby is safe." Something shifted in Grusha's expression, a crack in the stoic mask she had been wearing. She nodded once, sharply, and followed him out into the rain for the short sprint to the house. Isaac's cabin was simple but well maintained. The main room served as kitchen, dining area, and living space, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall. A doorway led to his bedroom in the back. He had built the place himself after leaving the military 3 years ago, determined to make a peaceful life far from the conflicts that had defined his youth. He got the fire built up quickly while Grusha stood awkwardly near the door, still holding the baby. Once the flames were crackling and beginning to throw real heat, Isaac gestured to the chair closest to the fireplace. "Sit," he said. "Get warm. I will heat some milk." Grusha moved to the chair and sank into it gratefully, carefully unwrapping the wet layers from the baby and replacing them with the dry blanket. The little girl was not crying anymore, which worried Isaac. He hurried to heat a small pot of goat's milk on the fire, testing it carefully to make sure it was not too hot. "You know how to feed a child this young?" Grusha asked, and Isaac heard the uncertainty in her voice. "I helped raise my younger sister after our mother died," Isaac said, finding a clean cloth and fashioning it into a makeshift feeding device by letting the baby suck milk from the corner. It was not ideal, but it worked. The baby latched on immediately, drinking with desperate hunger. Grusha watched with an expression Isaac could not quite read. "You are kind," she said quietly, "kinder than I expected." "What did you expect?" Isaac asked, though he thought he knew the answer. "I expected to be shot on sight," Grusha said bluntly, "or driven back into the storm. Humans do not help orcs, especially not orc women alone with human children." Isaac could not argue with that. She was absolutely right. What he was doing went against every convention, every law, every social norm of the frontier. If word got out that he had sheltered an orc in his home, he would be ostracized at best, run off his land at worst. "The baby is innocent," Isaac said instead of addressing any of that. "She did not ask to be abandoned in a storm. Neither did you, I suppose." Grusha was quiet for a long moment. The baby finished drinking and let out a small, satisfied sound. Grusha carefully cradled her, and the child's eyes began to drift closed. "I was hunting," Grusha finally said. "Far from my clan's territory, I heard the sounds of violence on the road, shouting, fighting. By the time I reached the wagon, everyone was gone, dead or fled, I do not know which, but I heard the baby crying from inside the wagon. She was alone, hungry, frightened. She looked down at the sleeping infant. I could not leave her." "Even though it put you in danger," Isaac said. "Even though," Grusha agreed. She raised her amber eyes to meet his. "I know what humans think of my kind. I know the stories you tell your children about us. Most of them are true enough, but I could not leave an innocent to die alone. I am not that kind of monster." Isaac felt something shift in his chest, some old certainty beginning to crack. He had spent years being taught that orcs were irredeemable, that they were creatures of pure violence and cruelty. Yet here was Grusha, who had risked everything to save a child that was not even her own species. "You are not a monster at all," Isaac found himself saying. Grusha looked at him sharply, as though suspecting mockery, but Isaac met her gaze steadily. After a moment, she looked away, and Isaac thought he saw something vulnerable flash across her face. "You are wet," Isaac said, clearing his throat. "I can offer you dry clothes, though I am not sure anything I have will fit properly." "I will manage," Grusha said. "Thank you." Isaac found his largest shirt and a pair of trousers that would be comically short on her but at least dry. He left them on the chair beside her and retreated to his bedroom to change out of his own soaked clothing. When he emerged, Grusha had managed to change one-handed while keeping the baby secure, and she had hung her wet leather garments near the fire to dry. Isaac's clothes hung loosely on her frame. Despite her broad shoulders, she was muscular but leaner than he had expected, with a warrior's build. "There is stew left from yesterday," Isaac said, suddenly unsure what to do with himself. He had never been alone with an orc woman before. He had barely ever been this close to an orc without weapons drawn. "Are you hungry?" "Yes," Grusha admitted. But the baby, I can hold her while you eat, Isaac offered. Grusha hesitated, then carefully transferred the sleeping infant to Isaac's arms. Her hands were large and rough with calluses, but her touch was gentle. Isaac settled the baby against his chest, and she made a small sound but did not wake. He watched as Grusha ate the reheated stew with obvious hunger, though she was trying to be polite about it. She had probably not eaten since before she found the baby, he realized. All afternoon and evening in the storm, walking without complaint, and she had not mentioned her own needs once. "When did you last eat?" Isaac asked. Grusha paused with the spoon halfway to her mouth. "This morning. Before the hunt." "There is plenty," Isaac said. "Eat your fill." She did, finishing 2 full bowls before finally sitting back with a sigh. Color was returning to her face now that she was warm and fed, and Isaac found himself noticing details he had missed before. The elegant curve of her pointed ears, the way her tusks were actually quite small and strangely delicate, the intelligence in her amber eyes. "Thank you," Grusha said quietly, "for all of this. I know what you are risking." "The storm will pass," Isaac said. "We can worry about everything else after that." But the storm did not pass. It raged for 3 days straight, one of the worst early autumn tempests Isaac had seen in his years on the frontier. The rain came down in sheets, and the wind howled around the cabin like a living thing. There was no question of Grusha leaving even if she had been willing to brave the weather. Taking a baby out into that storm would have been murder. So they settled into a strange, tentative routine. Grusha slept in the barn, insisting she would not impose on Isaac's home more than necessary, though he made sure she had plenty of blankets and a safe place away from the animals. The baby, whom they had started calling Rose for lack of any other name, slept in a makeshift cradle Isaac fashioned from a drawer lined with soft cloth. During the day, they both worked to care for her. Isaac had not realized how much work a baby required. Rose needed to be fed every few hours, her cloths changed constantly, her cries soothed in the middle of the night. Grusha threw herself into the task with fierce determination, but Isaac could see the uncertainty in her eyes. She had no more experience with human babies than he did, and every cry from Rose sent both of them into mild panic. On the second day, Isaac found Grusha pacing the main room with Rose wailing in her arms, looking more distressed than he had ever seen her. "I do not understand," Grusha said, her voice tight with frustration. "She has eaten, she is clean and dry. Why does she cry?" "Sometimes babies just cry," Isaac said, though he was not entirely sure that was true. He reached for Rose, and after a moment's hesitation, Grusha handed her over. Isaac held the baby against his shoulder and began to walk slowly around the room, swaying slightly with each step. He hummed a tuneless melody his mother had once used to soothe his sister. Gradually, Rose's cries subsided into hiccups, then silence. Her small body relaxed against him. "How did you do that?" Grusha asked, staring at him. "I have no idea," Isaac admitted. "Sometimes they just need to be held and moved around, I think." Grusha watched him continue to pace with Rose, an expression on her face that Isaac could not quite decipher. "You are good with her," she finally said. "So are you," Isaac replied. "You have kept her alive and safe. That is more than many would have managed." "I am large and clumsy," Grusha said, looking down at her hands. "I fear hurting her by accident." "You have not hurt her yet," Isaac pointed out. "And I have seen how gentle you are with her. She is lucky you found her." Grusha turned away, but not before Isaac saw the emotion that flickered across her face. He wondered what her life had been like, what had led her to be alone in these woods, why she had seemed so resigned to being treated as a monster. But those were questions for another time. That night, The wind grew so strong that Isaac insisted Grusha stay in the house rather than risk the barn. She reluctantly agreed, settling on the floor near the fire with a pile of blankets while Isaac took his bed in the back room with Rose in her makeshift cradle beside him. But when he woke in the deep hours of the night to tend to Rose's crying, he found Grusha already up, heating milk in the darkness. "I heard her," Grusha said simply, handing him the warmed milk. "I thought I could help." They fed Rose together in the flickering firelight, and Isaac found himself studying Grusha's face. She looked tired, with shadows under her eyes, but there was a softness to her expression as she watched Rose drink that made something warm unfold in Isaac's chest. "Tell me about your clan," Isaac said quietly, not wanting to wake Rose too much. Grusha's expression shuddered immediately. "Why? I am curious," Isaac said. "I have spent my whole life fighting orcs, fearing them, hating them, but I never really knew anything about them. About you." Grusha was silent for so long that Isaac thought she would not answer. Then, slowly, she began to speak. "I am from the Broken Tusk clan," she said. "We live in the mountains 3 days north of here. We are warriors, mostly, raiders by your people's standards. We take what we need to survive, and we fight anyone who threatens our territory." "Including humans," Isaac said. "Including humans," Grusha confirmed. "Your people have taken more and more of the land that was once ours. Towns where our ancestors hunted, roads through our sacred places. We fight because we have nowhere else to go." Isaac absorbed that, thinking of all the frontier settlements he had helped defend, all the times he had been told the orcs were simply savage and cruel. "And you?" he asked. "Are you a warrior?" "I was," Grusha said. "I am good with a blade. Good at tracking. But she paused, choosing her words carefully. "I questioned things. I asked why we had to kill human farmers who had nothing to do with the soldiers who pushed us from our lands. Why we had to raid villages where children lived. The elders did not like my questions." "So you left," Isaac guessed. "I was cast out," Grusha corrected. 3 months ago. I have been alone since then, living in the wild, hunting, surviving. I had no plan beyond that, and then I found Rose. The baby had finished eating and was already drifting back to sleep." Isaac carefully placed her back in the cradle, and when he turned around, he found Grusha watching him with an expression of such naked loneliness that it made his breath catch. "You do not have to be alone anymore," Isaac heard himself say. "At least for now, while the storm lasts." Grusha's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment, Isaac thought she might cry. But she just nodded once and turned back to her makeshift bed by the fire. Isaac lay awake for a long time after that, listening to the storm and thinking about the strange turn his life had taken. 3 days ago, he had been a simple farmer, content in his solitude. Now he was sheltering an exiled orc warrior and an abandoned human baby, and the most disturbing part was how right it felt. By the 3rd day, the storm was finally beginning to weaken. The rain continued, but the wind died down, and Isaac knew it would only be a matter of time before the roads were passable again. He and Grusha worked together in careful silence, both aware that their borrowed time together was running out. Rose was thriving, growing more alert and responsive each day. She had even smiled at Grusha that morning, a tiny expression that had made the orc woman's entire face light up with wonder. Isaac had felt something twist in his chest at the sight. "We need to decide what to do," Isaac said that evening as they sat by the fire. Rose was asleep in Grusha's arms, and the domesticity of the scene was almost painful. "The storm is passing. Soon people will be traveling the roads again." "I know," Grusha said quietly. She looked down at Rose with an expression of pure anguish. "I have been thinking about it. There is a human settlement 2 days south of here, near the river. If I bring Rose close to the town at night, I could leave her somewhere she will be found. Someone will take her in. And what about you?" Isaac asked, though he already knew the answer. "I will go back to the wild," Grusha said. "Continue as I was before." "Alone," Isaac said. "Alone," Grusha confirmed. "It is better than the alternative." Isaac knew she was right. There was no place for an orc and a human child together in this world. The kindest thing Grusha could do was ensure Rose ended up with a human family that could care for her properly. And yet the thought of Grusha walking away, of never seeing her again, of her disappearing back into the wilderness to live and die alone, it was unbearable. "What if there was another option?" Isaac said slowly, his heart pounding. Grusha looked at him sharply. "What do you mean?" "What if," Isaac took a breath, hardly believing what he was about to suggest. "What if Rose stayed here? With me, I have land resources, I can care for her, and you could stay too, work the farm with me, help raise her." Grusha stared at him as though he had lost his mind. "You cannot mean that." "Why not?" Isaac challenged. "I am alone out here. The nearest neighbor is miles away. No one needs to know your heritage if you do not want them to. We could say you are a widow from the borderlands, that Rose is yours, and I am helping you." "That is a lie," Grusha said. "It is a necessary fiction," Isaac countered. "The alternative is Rose going to strangers who might not care for her properly, and you going back to living alone in the wild. This way, she stays safe, you have a home, and—" He stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence. "And you?" Grusha asked softly. "What do you gain from this?" Isaac looked at her, at this fierce, gentle, impossible woman who had walked through a storm to save a child that was not hers. He thought about the past 3 days, about how natural it had felt to work alongside her, to share the care of Rose, to talk with her in the quiet hours of the night. "I gain not being alone," Isaac said honestly. "I gain knowing that Rose has 2 people who care about her, and I gain your company, which I have found I enjoy more than I expected." Grusha was trembling slightly, and Isaac realized she was fighting tears. "You do not know what you are offering," she said. "If anyone discovers what I am, then we will deal with it," Isaac said firmly. "But we have a chance here, Grusha. A chance for all 3 of us to have something better. Do you not want that, more than you know?" Grusha whispered. She looked down at Rose, then back up at Isaac. "But I need you to understand what you are risking. If your neighbors discover an orc living on your land, I know the risks," Isaac interrupted. "And I am willing to take them. The question is, are you willing to stay?" Grusha's hands tightened around Rose, and a single tear traced down her green cheek. "Yes," she said, her voice barely audible. "Yes, I will stay." Relief and something warmer flooded through Isaac's chest. He reached out slowly, giving Grusha every chance to pull away, and placed his hand over hers where it cradled Rose. Grusha looked up at him with those startling amber eyes, and Isaac saw his own wonder reflected back at him. "Then it is settled," Isaac said. "Tomorrow we start figuring out how to make this work." But making it work proved more complicated than Isaac had anticipated. Over the following weeks, as autumn deepened into the first hints of winter, they had to establish a careful routine that would protect Grusha's secret while still allowing them to function as a household. Isaac rode into the nearest town, a small settlement called Millbrook about a day's journey away, and spread a carefully constructed story. He had taken in a widow from the frontier, he said, a woman named Greta whose family had been killed in an orc raid. She was helping him with the farm in exchange for shelter and protection. The baby was hers, he claimed, the only survivor of the attack. The townspeople had received this news with sympathy and approval. Isaac was known as a reliable, honest man, a decorated veteran who had served honorably before retiring to farm. If he chose to help a widow and orphan, That spoke well of his character. No one questioned his story, but maintaining the fiction required constant vigilance. Grusha had to stay out of sight whenever Isaac had visitors, which was rare but not unheard of. She kept her hair bound up to hide the distinctive pointed ears, and she learned to keep her mouth closed to hide her tusks when speaking to anyone from a distance. Isaac bought her proper women's clothing from the town's simple dresses and work clothes that would help her blend in if anyone saw her from afar. The most difficult part was that Grusha could never go into town herself. It was too risky someone would see her green skin, her unusual features, and the entire ruse would collapse. So she remained on the farm, a ghost living half a life, and Isaac could see it wearing on her. But there were compensations. Rose was growing and thriving, a happy, healthy baby who brought light into both their lives. She had started to recognize them, smiling when she saw their faces, reaching for them with tiny hands. Watching Grusha with Rose was one of Isaac's greatest pleasures. The orc woman was endlessly patient and gentle, singing songs in her native language, playing little games that made Rose giggle with delight. And there was the work of the farm itself, which they quickly learned to share. Grusha was enormously strong, capable of lifting loads that Isaac would have struggled with, and she took to farm work with the same determination she brought to everything else. Together they prepared the fields for winter, repaired the barn roof, chopped enough wood to last through the cold months, and tended to the animals. It was during those long days of working side by side that Isaac found himself falling for Grusha in ways he had not anticipated. It started small, noticing how graceful she was despite her size, how her laugh sounded like music, how her eyes lit up when Rose did something new. But gradually it grew into something deeper, something that made his chest ache when he looked at her. He tried to ignore it. This arrangement was complicated enough without adding romantic feelings into the mix. Grusha had agreed to stay to care for Rose and to have a safe place to live. She had not signed up for a human man developing feelings for her. And besides, what could come of it? They were different species from cultures that had been at war for generations. The very idea was absurd, but his heart did not seem to care about logic. 2 months after Grusha had arrived, the first snow began to fall. Isaac woke to find the world transformed, everything covered in a blanket of white. He built up the fire and was preparing breakfast when Grusha emerged from her room. Isaac had given her his bedroom while he slept in the main room now, wanting her and Rose to have privacy and comfort. "It snowed," Grusha said, going to the window and staring out with an expression of wonder. "You have seen snow before, surely," Isaac said, amused. "Of course," Grusha replied. "But not like this. Not from inside a warm home, knowing I do not have to go out and hunt in it, knowing I am safe." She turned to look at him, and the vulnerability in her eyes made Isaac's breath catch. "Thank you, Isaac, for all of this." "You do not have to thank me," Isaac said. "You work as hard as I do. This is your home now, too." Grusha's expression softened, and she crossed the room to help him prepare breakfast. They had fallen into easy rhythms together, moving around each other in the small space with practiced efficiency. Isaac was intensely aware of her presence, of every accidental brush of their hands, every moment their eyes met. After breakfast, as Grusha was feeding Rose, there came a knock at the door. They both froze. Visitors were rare, especially now with the snow beginning. Isaac caught Grusha's eye and jerked his head toward the bedroom. She immediately rose and disappeared with Rose, closing the door behind her. Isaac waited until he heard the lock click, then opened the front door to find his nearest neighbor, Thomas Crane, standing on the porch with a covered basket. "Morning, Isaac," Thomas said cheerfully. He was a stocky man in his 50s, a farmer who lived about 3 miles east. Thought I would check on you with the snow coming, and Mary sent some preserves for you and your house guest." "That is very kind," Isaac said, taking the basket but not inviting Thomas in. "Please thank Mary for me. How is the widow settling in?" Thomas asked, craning his neck to see past Isaac into the house. "Mary has been wanting to meet her, offer some women's company. Must be lonely for her out here with just you." "She is shy," Isaac said quickly. "The attack it left her very shaken. She is not ready for visitors yet." Of course," Thomas said sympathetically. "Poor woman, and the baby growing well," Isaac said. "Healthy and happy. Glad to hear it." Thomas lingered on the porch, clearly hoping to be invited in, but Isaac stood firm. Finally, with a somewhat disappointed farewell, Thomas trudged back through the snow to his wagon. Isaac watched until he was out of sight, then closed the door and let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Grusha emerged from the bedroom with Rose in her arms. "That was close," she said. "It will not be the last time," Isaac replied grimly. "People are curious and kind. They want to help." "But they cannot know the truth," Grusha said. She looked down at Rose, her expression troubled. "Isaac, I have been thinking, this cannot last forever. Eventually someone will see me up close, will realize what I am." "We will be careful," Isaac insisted. "Careful is not enough," Grusha said. "One mistake and everything falls apart. And then what happens to Rose, to you?" "Nothing will happen," Isaac said with more confidence than he felt. "We just need to be smart about this." But Grusha's words haunted him over the following days. She was right, they were living on borrowed time, hoping that luck and careful planning would be enough to protect them. But luck had a way of running out. The crisis came 2 weeks later, on a day when the sun was bright, and the snow had melted enough to make the roads passable again. Isaac had gone into the barn to check on a goat that had been acting sickly, leaving Grusha in the house with Rose. He was examining the animal when he heard the sound of wagon wheels crunching through the remaining snow. Isaac's stomach dropped. He quickly finished with the goat and stepped out of the barn to see a wagon he did not recognize pulling up to the house. 2 men climbed down. One was Thomas Crane, and the other was a stranger, a lean man with a face like a weathered hawk. "Isaac," Thomas called out cheerfully. "This here is Marshal Vance from the territorial garrison. He is investigating that wagon attack from a few months back. Thought your house guest might be able to help with information." Isaac felt ice water flood his veins. "A marshal? Here, now?" "Of course," Isaac said, keeping his voice steady. "Let me just—" But before he could finish, the door to the house opened and Grusha stepped out. She must have heard the wagon, must have been watching from the window. She had a shawl wrapped around her head and shoulders, concealing her ears and most of her face. But as she stepped into the bright sunlight, there was no hiding the distinctive green cast to her skin. Marshal Vance's eyes narrowed immediately. His hand went to his gun. "That is an orc," he said flatly. Everything happened very fast after that. Thomas stumbled backward, his face white with shock. The marshal drew his weapon, aiming it at Grusha. And Isaac stepped between them, his heart hammering, his own hand going to his sword. "Stand down," Isaac said, his voice hard with command. It was the voice he had used when he was a sergeant in the territorial army, and it carried enough authority that the marshal hesitated. "You are harboring an orc," the marshal said. "That is a crime, Pemberton." "She has done nothing wrong," Isaac replied. "She has been living here peacefully, helping with the farm, caring for the baby." "The baby," Thomas interrupted, his voice strangled. "Isaac, you said the baby was hers." "But if she is an orc, the baby is human," Isaac said. "Grusha found her after the wagon attack, saved her life. She has been caring for her ever since." "Grusha," the marshal repeated, his lip curling. "You have given it a name. By God, man, have you lost your mind?" Isaac's hand tightened on his sword hilt. Behind him, he could hear Grusha's breathing, quick and shallow. He knew she could fight. She was probably better with a blade than either of these men. But if she fought now, if she hurt or killed a territorial marshal, there would be no coming back from that. They would both be hunted. "Listen to me," Isaac said, forcing calm into his voice. "Grusha has been here for months. In that time, she has harmed no one. She has worked the land. She has cared for an abandoned child. She has lived peacefully. The law says orcs who commit violence against humans should be punished, but she has committed no violence. The law says orcs should be driven from human lands," the marshal countered, "by force if necessary." "Then the law is wrong," Isaac said flatly. The marshal's eyes widened. "You are defending an orc over your own people." "I am defending someone who has done nothing to deserve being shot," Isaac replied. "And yes, she is an orc, but she is also a person who saved a human child's life." Thomas was staring at Isaac as though he had never seen him before. "Isaac, this is madness. She is an orc. They killed your fellow soldiers. They have raided our settlements, and we have driven them from their lands and killed their people," Isaac said. "There is blood on both sides, Thomas. But Grusha has chosen to walk away from that. She deserves a chance to live in peace." The marshal shook his head. "I cannot allow this. It sets a dangerous precedent. If word gets out that we are letting orcs live among us, then do not let word get out," Isaac interrupted. "Grusha has been living here for months and no one knew. No harm has been done. The baby is safe and healthy. We can continue as we have been." "Absolutely not," the marshal said. "I am placing the orc under arrest. She will be transported to the garrison for questioning and trial." "No." The word came from Grusha, who stepped around Isaac to face the marshal directly. Her shawl had fallen back, revealing her full features in the sunlight: the green skin, the pointed ears, the small tusks. But her amber eyes were clear and unafraid. "If you take me, you must take the child as well. I am all she knows. Separating us would be cruel to her." "The child will be placed with a proper human family," the marshal said. "I am her family," Grusha said fiercely. "I found her. I saved her. I have fed her and cared for her and kept her alive. She knows my voice, my touch. You would traumatize her by tearing her from the only mother she has ever known." Isaac saw the marshal hesitate, saw uncertainty flicker across his face. Thomas was looking between them all, clearly torn. "Marshal," Isaac said quietly, "you served in the territorial wars. You know what it is like to fight orcs, but have you ever seen one like this? One who would risk everything to save a human child?" "I have not," the marshal admitted grudgingly. "Then perhaps," Isaac pressed, "there is more to orcs than we have been taught. Perhaps they are not all monsters. Perhaps some of them, given a chance, would choose peace." He paused. "Grusha has chosen peace. Let her keep it." The marshal stared at Grusha for a long moment. She stared back, her chin raised, her arms wrapped around herself as though she was holding her own courage together through sheer force of will. Finally, the marshal lowered his gun. "I am going to regret this," he muttered. He looked at Isaac. "You vouch for her. You take full responsibility for her actions." "I do," Isaac said immediately. "And if she commits any violence, any crime, you understand you will be held accountable as well." "I understand." The marshal holstered his weapon with obvious reluctance. "Fine. But hear this, Pemberton, if I hear any reports of trouble from this farm, if there are any complaints, any hint that the orc is causing problems, I will come back. And next time I will not be so lenient." "There will be no trouble," Isaac promised. The marshal turned to leave, then paused. "For what it is worth," he said, not looking at them, "the child does look healthy and happy. I have seen human families who care for their own children less well than you two seem to care for her." Then he climbed back into the wagon. Thomas followed more slowly, giving Isaac one last, confused look before driving away. Isaac and Grusha stood frozen until the wagon disappeared from sight. Then Grusha's legs seemed to give out, and she sat down hard on the porch steps. Isaac sat beside her, his own hands shaking now that the danger had passed. "That was foolish," Grusha said, her voice rough. "You should have let him take me." "Never," Isaac said. "I meant what I said. You deserve to live in peace." "But now they know," Grusha said. "The marshal, Thomas, they will tell others. Your neighbors will find out you are harboring an orc." "Maybe," Isaac admitted. "Or maybe the marshal will keep it quiet to avoid explaining why he did not arrest you. And Thomas, I have known him for years. He is a good man. Give him time to think about what he saw today, and I believe he will keep our secret." "You are putting enormous faith in human kindness," Grusha said bitterly. "You saved a human child in the rain," Isaac pointed out. "You are living proof that kindness exists across species." "Why should I not have faith in it?" Grusha looked at him, and something in her expression made Isaac's heart stutter. "You are an unusual man, Isaac Pemberton," she said softly. "You are an unusual woman, Grusha of the Broken Tusk clan," Isaac replied. They sat in silence for a moment, the winter sun warm on their faces despite the cold. Then Rose began to cry from inside the house, and the spell was broken. They rose and went inside together, back to the mundane work of caring for a baby, but something had shifted between them. Isaac's faith in Thomas Crane proved justified. 3 days later, the farmer appeared at the door alone, his face serious but not hostile. Isaac invited him in, and Thomas sat awkwardly at the table while Grusha prepared tea with visibly shaking hands. "I have not told anyone," Thomas said without preamble, "and I do not plan to, but I need to understand, Isaac. Why?" "Because it is the right thing to do," Isaac said simply. "Grusha has done nothing wrong. She deserves a chance at a life." Thomas looked at Grusha, who was holding Rose while the baby played with the string of her necklace. "May I ask you something?" he said to her. Grusha tensed but nodded. "Why did you save the child?" Thomas asked. "You must have known the danger it would put you in." Grusha was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "I heard her crying," she said. "All alone in that ruined wagon. No one else was coming to help her. If I had left her, she would have died. I could not live with that." "Even though she is human and you are orc," Thomas pressed. "Even though," Grusha confirmed. "A baby is innocent no matter its race. She did not deserve to die because her people and mine are enemies." Thomas absorbed this, his weathered face thoughtful. Then he turned to Isaac. "And you took them both in, even knowing what she is." "I did," Isaac said, "and I would do it again." "You have always been a decent man," Thomas said slowly. "One of the best I have known. If you believe this orc Grusha can be trusted, then I will trust your judgment." He paused. "But you need to understand, most folks would not be so understanding. You need to be careful." "We will be," Isaac promised. "Thank you, Thomas, for keeping this quiet, for giving us a chance." Thomas rose to leave, but at the door he turned back. "Mary wants to know if you need anything for the baby," he said. "Clothes she has outgrown, toys, anything like that. We want to help, if you will let us." Grusha looked up, surprise clear on her face. "You would help us? Even knowing what I am?" "You saved a child," Thomas said. "That matters more than the color of your skin or the shape of your ears. Mary says any woman who cares for a baby that well cannot be all bad, orc or not." After Thomas left, Grusha sat down heavily, Rose still in her arms. "I do not understand humans," she said wonderfully. "You are supposed to hate me, to fear me." "Maybe some do," Isaac said, "but others see past the surface to what is underneath. Thomas and Mary are good people. They see that you are good people too. Is that what you see when you look at me?" Grusha asked, and there was something vulnerable in her voice, something almost hopeful. A good person. Isaac crossed the room and knelt beside her chair so he could look up into her amber eyes. I see someone brave, he said. Someone kind. Someone who has sacrificed everything to protect an innocent life. I see someone who makes me laugh and who works harder than anyone I have ever known. I see someone who has become he paused, not sure how to finish that sentence. My friend, my partner, my family. You're what? Grusha prompted softly. Someone I care about, Isaac finished. Very much. Grusha's eyes widened, and for a moment she just stared at him. Then, slowly, she reached out with her free hand and touched his face, her rough fingertips tracing his jaw with wondering gentleness. I care about you too, she whispered. More than I thought possible, more than I should. Why should you not? Isaac asked, covering her hand with his. Because I am orc and you are human, Grusha said. Because there is no future in this. Because even if your neighbors accept me now, others will not. Because loving you could destroy you. Loving me, Isaac repeated, his heart suddenly pounding. Grusha froze, clearly not having meant to say that word. But now it hung in the air between them, impossible to take back. She tried to withdraw her hand, but Isaac held it gently in place. Do you? He asked. Love me? Grusha's eyes filled with tears. Yes, she breathed. God help me, yes. I think I started to fall for you that first night when you brought us in from the storm, when you chose kindness over fear. And every day since then, working beside you, raising Rose together, learning who you are, I fell deeper. But it is impossible, Isaac. We cannot. Isaac silenced her by leaning forward and pressing his lips to hers. For a moment, Grusha went completely still, shocked into immobility. Then she made a small sound in her throat and kissed him back, her lips warm and soft despite her tusks. It was awkward at first, both of them adjusting to the difference in their mouths, but then they found a rhythm that worked, that felt right. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Grusha was crying openly. We cannot do this, she said, even as her hand tightened on his. It will only end in pain. Then let us have joy while we can, Isaac said. Let us take this chance at happiness, however long it lasts. I love you, Grusha. I do not care what species you are. I do not care what anyone else thinks. I love you and I want to build a life with you. You and Rose. A real family. You would truly want that? Grusha asked, searching his face, knowing what it would mean. The danger, the judgment, the constant hiding. I have lived a careful life for too long, Isaac said. Alone, safe, and empty. You and Rose have filled my life with purpose and joy. I would rather face danger with you than live safely without you. Grusha let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. You are an idiot, she said, but there was no heat in it, only wonder. Probably, Isaac agreed. Is that a yes? Yes, Grusha said and kissed him again. Rose, caught between them, made a noise of protest and they pulled apart laughing. We should probably not squish the baby, Isaac said. Probably not, Grusha agreed, her eyes bright with tears and laughter and something that looked like hope. They rose together, and Isaac wrapped his arms around both Grusha and Rose, holding his family close. He knew there would be challenges ahead. He knew that loving Grusha would never be easy, that there would always be people who would not understand, who would condemn them. But standing there in the warm glow of the fire, with the woman he loved in his arms and a baby they both cherished, Isaac could not bring himself to regret anything. The winter deepened, and with it, Isaac and Grusha's relationship grew and evolved. They were careful still, there was no point in being reckless, but within the privacy of their home, they allowed themselves to be together openly. Grusha moved back into the bedroom with Isaac, and they learned each other in the quiet hours of the night. discovering that love could transcend species just as easily as it could transcend any other boundary. Rose continued to thrive, growing from an infant into a curious, active baby who was beginning to pull herself up on furniture and babble in sounds that might someday become words. She called Grusha Ma and Isaac Da, and neither of them had the heart to correct her, to explain that they were not truly her parents. In every way that mattered, they were her family. Thomas and Mary became unexpected allies. Mary came to visit one afternoon in early winter, bringing the promised baby clothes and toys. She was startled when she first saw Grusha up close, but after an initial moment of shock, she rallied admirably. "Well," Mary said, looking Grusha up and down, "you are certainly tall and green." "But Thomas was right, you do not look much like a monster," she smiled. "I am Mary Crane, pleased to make your acquaintance." Grusha had stared at the older woman, clearly not sure what to make of her. But when Mary asked to hold Rose and cooed over the baby with genuine affection, something in Grusha's expression softened. Over the following weeks, Mary became a regular visitor. She taught Grusha how to sew and mend clothing, how to preserve food for winter, how to make soap and candles, all the domestic arts that Grusha had never learned in her clan. In return, Grusha shared her knowledge of herbs and hunting, of tracking and survival. The two women formed an unlikely friendship, one that warmed Isaac's heart to see. "She reminds me of my daughter," Mary confessed to Isaac one day while Grusha was outside with Rose. "Strong and fierce, but with a soft heart underneath. I lost my girl to fever 5 years back. Helping Grusha, it eases that ache a bit." "She needs you," Isaac said honestly. "She has been so alone for so long. Having a friend, another woman to talk to, it means the world to her." "She is lucky to have you," Mary replied. "And you are lucky to have her. I see the way you look at each other. That is real love, no matter what anyone might say about your differences." Word did get out eventually. It was impossible to keep a secret forever in a frontier community where everyone knew everyone else's business. But the story that spread was not quite the truth. People heard that Isaac was living with a half-orc woman, that she was a refugee from the frontier, that she had saved a human child and was now helping Isaac raise her. The truth was softened, made palatable, and most people seemed willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, especially once they saw how well cared for Rose was. There were exceptions, of course. A few neighbors stopped speaking to Isaac. Some muttered darkly about the corruption of accepting orc blood into their community. But these voices were in the minority, and they grew quieter as the months passed and no disaster befell the area. Spring came, and with it, new life. The snow melted, the roads cleared, and Isaac and Grusha prepared the fields for planting. Rose took her first wobbly steps, laughing with delight as she stumbled between Isaac and Grusha. They were a family in every sense now, bound not by blood but by choice and love. It was on a warm afternoon in late spring that Isaac made his decision. He had been thinking about it for weeks, planning carefully, and finally he was ready. He waited until Rose was napping and Grusha was working in the garden, then went out to join her. "Grusha," he said, "can we talk?" She looked up from the seedlings she was planting, concern flickering across her face. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong," Isaac assured her. He took a breath, his heart pounding. "I have something I want to ask you." Grusha straightened up, brushing dirt from her hands. "What is it?" Isaac had planned a speech, but faced with Grusha's questioning amber eyes, all his carefully prepared words fled. So he just dropped to one knee in the dirt and pulled out the ring he had commissioned from the blacksmith in Millbrook, a simple band of silver, engraved with an orc design Mary had helped him research. "Grusha of the Broken Tusk clan," Isaac said. You came into my life in a storm, and you have brought nothing but light since then. You have made me happier than I ever thought possible. You have given me a family, a purpose, a reason to wake up every morning with joy. I love you more than I can put into words. And I know we cannot have a traditional marriage ceremony. No priest would agree to wed a human and an orc. But I do not need a priest or papers to know that you are the person I want to spend my life with. So I am asking you, here in the dirt of our farm with our daughter sleeping inside, will you be my wife? Will you let me be your husband? Will you bind your life to mine, officially and forever? Grusha was crying, tears streaming down her green cheeks. Her hands covered her mouth, and for a long moment she could not speak. Then she dropped to her knees in front of him and grabbed his face between her hands. Yes, she said fiercely. Yes, 1,000 times yes. I will be your wife, Isaac Pemberton. I will stand beside you for whatever time we are given. I will love you and Rose and this life we have built together. Yes. Isaac slipped the ring onto her finger. It was slightly too large, her hands bigger than the human woman size he had guessed at, but she did not seem to care. She kissed him hard, tasting of tears and earth and joy, and Isaac thought his heart might burst from happiness. They married themselves that evening in a private ceremony with only Thomas and Mary as witnesses. There were no official papers, no legal recognition, but Isaac spoke vows he had written himself, and Grusha replied with vows in both common and her own orcish tongue. Thomas and Mary pronounced them wed by the authority of common decency and human compassion, and if the law did not recognize it, well, the law had been wrong about many things. That night, as they lay in bed with Rose sleeping peacefully in her cradle nearby, Grusha traced the ring on her finger in wonder. I never thought I would have this, she said quietly. A home, a family, someone who loves me not despite what I am, but including all of what I am. You deserve all of it and more, Isaac said, pulling her close. You are the bravest, kindest, most incredible person I have ever known. I am an orc, Grusha said, but there was no pain in it now, only acceptance. You are my wife, Isaac corrected, and that is all that matters. Summer came in warm and golden, and the farm prospered. The crops grew tall and healthy, the animals thrived, and Rose grew into a bright, curious toddler who followed Grusha everywhere, chattering away in a mix of common and orcish words. Isaac had never been happier. But peace on the frontier was always fragile. The trouble came in late summer, when a group of orc raiders attacked a settlement about 20 miles north of Isaac's farm. It was a brutal attack, 3 families killed, homes burned, livestock stolen. The territorial militia mobilized, and suddenly the entire region was on high alert, suspicious of any orc presence. Isaac heard about the raid when he went into Millbrook for supplies. The town was buzzing with anger and fear, and he heard more than one person call for all orcs to be driven from human lands, killed on sight if necessary. He bought what he needed and left quickly, his stomach churning with dread. When he got home, he found Grusha in the garden with Rose, teaching the little girl the names of different plants. She looked up as he approached, and her smile faded when she saw his expression. What happened? She asked. Isaac told her about the raid, about the mood in town, and watched the light die in her eyes. They will come for me, she said quietly. They will assume I am part of it, or that I am helping the raiders somehow. You have been here the whole time, Isaac protested. You have done nothing wrong. It does not matter, Grusha said. She picked up Rose and held her close. Isaac, you need to listen to me. If they come when they come, you need to distance yourself from me. Say I deceived you, that you did not know I was helping raiders. Save yourself. Absolutely not, Isaac said flatly. I am not throwing you to the wolves to save my own skin. Think of Rose, Grusha pleaded. If they take you too, what happens to her? Isaac opened his mouth to argue, but before he could speak, they heard the sound of horses approaching. Multiple horses moving fast. His blood turned to ice. "Take Rose inside," he said quickly. "Hide her. Do not come out no matter what you hear." "Isaac, please," he said, and the desperation in his voice must have convinced her because she nodded and ran for the house with Rose in her arms. Isaac turned to face the approaching riders. There were 5 of them, all wearing the insignia of the territorial militia. The leader was a man Isaac recognized, Captain Garrett, a hardliner who had always advocated for aggressive action against orcs. "Pemberton," Garrett said, reining in his horse. "We heard you have an orc living on your property." "I have a refugee under my protection," Isaac said carefully, "a woman who has committed no crimes." "All orcs are criminals by their nature," Garrett said, "and with the recent raid we cannot take chances. We are rounding up all orcs in the region for questioning." "She has been here for nearly a year," Isaac said. "She could not have had anything to do with a raid 20 miles north." "Maybe, maybe not," Garrett said, "but we will be the judge of that. Bring her out." "No," Isaac said flatly. Garrett's eyes narrowed. "That was not a request, Pemberton. We have the authority to search your property. Do not make this difficult." "She is my wife," Isaac said, the words ringing clear in the afternoon air. "And I will not hand her over to be interrogated like a criminal when she has done nothing wrong." The militiamen exchanged glances. Garrett looked genuinely shocked. "Your wife? You married an orc?" "I did," Isaac said. "And if you want to take her, you will have to go through me." "You realize you are confessing to treason," Garrett said. "Consorting with the enemy, harboring a known dangerous species." "She is not dangerous, and she is not the enemy," Isaac interrupted. "She is a woman who saved a human child's life and has lived peacefully on this land for a year. If that is treason, then I am guilty, but I will not let you take her." Garrett's hand moved toward his weapon. "Step aside, Pemberton. I do not want to hurt you, but I will if I must." Isaac drew his sword. Behind him, he heard the door of the house open, and his heart sank. Grusha had come out despite his orders. She stood on the porch, tall and proud, Rose on her hip. "No one needs to be hurt," Grusha called out. "I will go with you peacefully. Just leave Isaac and Rose alone." "No," Isaac shouted. "Grusha, get back inside." But she was already walking toward them, her expression calm despite the fear Isaac could see in her eyes. She approached the mounted men, and Isaac moved to intercept her, putting himself between Grusha and the militia. "I will not let you take her," he said again. "Isaac," Grusha said softly. "Please, I will not let you be hurt because of me." "And I will not let them take you," Isaac replied. He raised his voice, addressing the militiamen. "Grusha has been a productive member of this community. Thomas Crane can vouch for her. Mary Crane has worked with her. She has harmed no one and committed no crime. By what law can you arrest her?" "By the law of survival," Garrett said. "Orcs are a threat to human civilization. We cannot afford to take chances." "Then you are no better than the raiders you claim to fight," Isaac said. "You would punish an innocent because of her race. That is not justice, that is just another kind of evil." "Careful, Pemberton," Garrett warned. "You are dangerously close to joining her in chains." "Then put us both in chains," Isaac challenged, "because I will not abandon her." For a long moment, no one moved. The militiamen looked uncomfortable, clearly not eager to arrest a decorated veteran and force him away from a baby. Garrett looked torn between duty and pragmatism. Then, unexpectedly, a new voice joined the conversation. "That will not be necessary, Captain." Everyone turned to see Marshal Vance riding up, the same man who had confronted them months ago. He dismounted and walked to stand beside Isaac and Grusha. "Marshal," Garrett said, clearly surprised, "what are you doing here?" "I heard you were planning to round up orcs in the region," Vance said. I came to make sure you did not do anything foolish, like arresting an orc who has been living peacefully under my supervision for the past year." "Your supervision," Garrett repeated. "That is correct," Vance said smoothly. "I am the one who authorized Grusha's presence on this land. She is here legally, with my permission, and has been reporting to me regularly on matters regarding orc activity in the region." This was news to Isaac, but he had the sense to keep his mouth shut and let Vance talk. "She is an informant?" one of the other militiamen asked. "In a manner of speaking," Vance said. "She provides valuable intelligence on orc movements and clan politics. Intelligence that has helped us prevent several potential raids. Do you really want to arrest someone who has been helping us?" Garrett looked deeply skeptical, but he also looked uncertain. Going against a territorial marshal was not something done lightly. "I was not informed of this arrangement," Garrett said slowly. "It was need to know only," Vance replied. "And now you know, so you can take your men and leave. There is no orc threat here." Garrett stared at Grusha for a long moment, then at Isaac, then back at Vance. Finally, with obvious reluctance, he nodded. "Very well," he said. "But if I find out this is not legitimate, if I discover she has had any contact with raiders, you will be the first to know," Vance assured him. "Now go. There are real threats out there that need your attention." The militiamen rode away, though Garrett cast several suspicious looks over his shoulder. As soon as they were out of sight, Isaac turned to Vance. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for lying for us." "Who says I lied?" Vance replied with a slight smile. "Grusha, you would not happen to have any information about orc movements in the region, would you?" Grusha looked startled, then thoughtful. "I might," she said slowly. "My old clan, I still know their patterns, their territories. I could tell you where they are likely to raid next, if that would be helpful." "It would be very helpful," Vance said. "And it would make my story retroactively true, which would be convenient for all of us." He looked between Isaac and Grusha, his expression softening. "Look, I do not love this situation. It goes against everything I was taught about orcs. But I have been watching you too, and I have heard the reports from your neighbors. You are doing something remarkable here, raising a child together, building a life, proving that peace between our peoples is possible. I am not going to be the one to destroy that." "Why?" Grusha asked. "Why help us?" Vance was quiet for a moment. "Because I am tired of the killing," he finally said. "I have been a soldier for 20 years, fighting orcs, watching good people die on both sides. If there is even a chance that we can find a better way, a way that does not involve endless bloodshed, then I have to take it. Even if it means bending some rules." Isaac felt a rush of gratitude so strong it nearly knocked him over. "We will not let you down," he promised. "See that you do not," Vance said. He tipped his hat to them both. "I will come by once a month from now on. Officially to receive Grusha's intelligence reports, unofficially to make sure you are all still safe and well." After Vance rode away, Isaac and Grusha stood together in the yard, holding each other tightly while Rose squirmed between them. "That was too close," Grusha whispered. "I know," Isaac replied, "but we survived it. We will survive whatever else comes." "You were willing to fight for me," Grusha said wonderingly, "to risk everything." "Always," Isaac said. "You are my wife, my family. There is nothing I would not do to protect you." Grusha kissed him then, deep and desperate and full of love. Rose, stuck between them, protested loudly, and they broke apart laughing despite the tears streaming down both their faces. The threat of the militia had been averted, but it left them all shaken. Over the following weeks, Grusha proved true to her word, providing Vance with detailed information about orc clan movements and territory boundaries. Her intelligence helped the territorial forces intercept 2 potential raids before they could reach human settlements. and it also allowed them to open negotiations with one of the more moderate clans. Slowly, carefully, word began to spread about the orc woman who was helping humans, who had chosen peace over war. Some orcs called her a traitor. Some humans called her an exception. But a precious few began to wonder if maybe there was a better way forward than endless conflict. Isaac and Grusha kept their heads down and focused on their life together. Rose turned 2 years old in the autumn, a bright, happy child who knew nothing about the prejudices that divided her world. She loved both her parents equally, saw no difference between human and orc except that Ma was taller and had neat little tusks that Rose liked to touch. Winter came again, their second together, and it was peaceful. Isaac taught Grusha to read and write common better, and she taught him some of the orcish language. They told Rose stories on cold nights, blending human folk tales with orcish legends, creating something new and hybrid and beautiful. In the spring, Mary confessed that she had been telling other women in the area about Grusha, about what a good mother she was, how hard she worked, how kind and gentle she was with Rose. Slowly, cautiously, a few other women began to visit. They came curious and left thoughtful, and some even came back, bringing their children to play with Rose. It was not acceptance, not exactly. But it was a beginning. On a warm day in late spring, Isaac was working in the field when he saw a figure approaching from the north. His hand went instinctively to his weapon, but then he recognized the distinctive walk another orc. A male, tall and broad-shouldered, with the bearing of a warrior. Isaac hurried back to the house to find Grusha standing in the yard, staring at the approaching figure with an expression of shock. "Do you know him?" Isaac asked. "That is Throck," Grusha whispered. "My brother." The orc male stopped about 20 feet away, eyeing Isaac warily before focusing on Grusha. He said something in the orcish language, harsh and demanding. Grusha replied in the same tongue, her voice steady but strained. "What is he saying?" Isaac asked quietly. "He says the clan wants me to come home," Grusha translated. "They have heard about me providing information to humans about helping prevent raids. The elders think I am a traitor, but some of the younger warriors, they think I might have the right idea. They are tired of fighting, tired of losing people. They want to talk about peace. And he is here to take you to them," Isaac guessed. "Yes," Grusha said. She looked at Isaac, conflict clear in her eyes. "This is what I hoped for. A chance to help my people find a better way, but I do not want to leave you and Rose." "Then do not leave us," Isaac said immediately. "Tell him to bring the elders here. We can talk here on neutral ground." Grusha translated Isaac's words, and Throck looked surprised. He responded with a question, and Grusha answered, pointing to the house, to the fields, to Rose who was playing near the porch with Mary watching over her. Throck's gaze followed Grusha's gesture, and Isaac saw him freeze when he spotted Rose. The big orc stared at the human child for a long moment, then looked back at Grusha with something like wonder on his face. He asked another question, softer this time. "He asks if Rose is the child I saved from the storm," Grusha said quietly. "He asks if I have truly been living here with a human, raising a human child as my own." "Tell him yes," Isaac said. "Tell him that here, orc and human live together in peace. That we work together, care for each other, build a life together. Tell him it is possible." Grusha translated, and Throck listened intently. Then, slowly, he nodded. He spoke again, and this time his tone was respectful rather than demanding. "He says he will return to the clan and tell them what he has seen," Grusha said. "He says if I am willing, the elders will come here to talk, not to fight, not to make demands, to talk about what peace might look like." "Tell him they are welcome," Isaac said, "as long as they come in peace." Over the next few weeks, preparations were made for an unprecedented meeting. Throck returned to his clan and reported what he had seen, and after much debate, a delegation of Orc elders agreed to travel to Isaac's farm. At the same time, Marshal Vance worked to convince the territorial government to send representatives as well. It was a fragile thing, this chance at peace. One wrong word, one moment of violence could shatter it completely. But Isaac looked at Grusha, at the hope shining in her amber eyes, and he knew they had to try. The meeting took place on a warm summer day. 6 Orc elders arrived, including Throck and a grizzled old warrior named Gorm who led the Broken Tusk clan. On the human side, there was Marshal Vance, Captain Garrett who had reluctantly agreed to attend, and representatives from 3 nearby settlements. They met in Isaac's yard, sitting on benches and chairs that had been set up in a circle. Grusha acted as translator, moving between the 2 groups, ensuring both sides understood each other. Rose played nearby, seemingly oblivious to the historic nature of what was happening, and perhaps that was appropriate. She represented what they were fighting for, a future where human and Orc children could grow up without war. The talks were tense and difficult. Old grievances were aired, old wounds reopened. There were moments when Isaac thought it would all fall apart, when tempers flared and hands moved toward weapons. But each time Grusha would step forward, her voice calm and firm, reminding both sides of what they had to gain from peace and what they had to lose from continued war. And slowly, painfully, progress was made. The Orcs agreed to stop raiding human settlements in exchange for access to certain traditional hunting grounds. The humans agreed to establish formal boundaries and stop expanding into Orc territory. Both sides agreed to return prisoners and open channels of communication for resolving disputes. It was not perfect. It was not everything anyone wanted. But it was a beginning, a foundation on which more could be built. At the end of the day, as the delegates were preparing to leave, Gorm approached Grusha. The old Orc studied her for a long moment, then spoke in the Orcish tongue. "He says I have brought honor to the clan in an unexpected way," Grusha translated, her voice thick with emotion. "He says I am welcome to return if I wish, that my exile is lifted." "And what do you wish?" Gorm asked in rough but understandable common, looking between Grusha and Isaac. Grusha reached out and took Isaac's hand, lacing her fingers through his. "This is my home," she said firmly. "These are my people now, both human and Orc. I will help however I can to build peace between our peoples, but I will not leave here." Gorm nodded slowly, and something that might have been approval flickered in his eyes. "You have chosen well," he said. "Take care of her, human." "With my life," Isaac promised. After everyone had left, Isaac and Grusha stood together in the yard, watching the sun set over their farm. Rose was asleep inside, exhausted from the excitement of the day. Mary and Thomas had taken the dishes inside and were cleaning up, giving the couple a moment of privacy. "We did it," Grusha said wonderingly. "We actually did it." "You did it," Isaac corrected. "You are the one who brought everyone together. You are the bridge between our peoples." "I could not have done it without you," Grusha insisted. "Without your faith in me, your willingness to stand beside me even when it was dangerous. You gave me the courage to believe peace was possible." Isaac pulled her close and she rested her head on his shoulder. They stood like that for a long time, just holding each other and watching the stars come out. "What happens now?" Grusha asked eventually. "Now we keep living," Isaac said. "We raise Rose, we work the farm. We host more meetings if needed. We prove every day that peace is possible, that love can cross any divide." He paused. "And maybe, if we are lucky, we expand our family." Grusha pulled back to look at him, surprise and hope warring on her face. "You want more children?" "I want whatever future you want," Isaac said. If you want more children, we will find a way. If you want to focus on peace negotiations, we will do that. As long as we are together, I am happy." "I want it all," Grusha confessed. "Children of our own, yes. A house full of love and laughter. But I also want to keep working for peace, to make sure Rose grows up in a world where she is not strange for having an orc mother and a human father, where other children can have families like ours without fear." "Then that is what we will do," Isaac said. "Together." Grusha kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. And somewhere inside the house, Rose stirred and called out for her parents, and they went to her together, ready to face whatever the future held. The years that followed were not always easy. There were setbacks in the peace process, moments when old hatreds threatened to reignite conflict. There were people on both sides who refused to accept the changes, who clung to the old ways of violence and suspicion. But there were also victories, small and large, that gave everyone hope. More orcs began to settle peacefully near human lands, working out trade agreements and cooperative hunting arrangements. A few brave human-orc couples followed Isaac and Grusha's example, building families that bridged the divide between species. Children grew up playing together, learning each other's languages and customs, seeing past the differences to the common humanity, the common personhood that united them all. Rose grew into a bright, confident young woman who spoke both common and orcish fluently, and worked alongside her parents as a translator and mediator. When she was 16, Grusha and Isaac had a second child, a son they named Thomas, after the friend who had first shown them acceptance. Thomas had his father's human features but his mother's amber eyes, and he grew up never knowing a world where humans and orcs were always enemies. Isaac and Grusha grew old together, working their farm and raising their children and watching the world slowly, painfully, change around them. It was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still prejudices, still work to be done. But it was better, and that was enough. On a cool autumn evening, when Isaac was in his 60s and Grusha was approaching 50, orcs lived slightly longer than humans, and she would likely outlive him by a decade or more. They sat together on the porch and watched the sunset. Rose was visiting with her own family. Now she had married a young man from Millbrook and had 2 children of her own. Thomas was inside preparing dinner, humming an orcish song his mother had taught him. "You ever regret it?" Isaac asked quietly, taking Grusha's hand. "Giving up your old life?" "Staying here." Grusha looked at him with those amber eyes he had loved for so many years, and she smiled. "Not for a single moment," she said. "You gave me everything I never knew I wanted: a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me love when I thought I was unworthy of it. You gave me hope when I had none." "You did the same for me," Isaac replied. "I was so alone before you came, so empty. You filled my life with meaning." "We saved each other," Grusha said. "Just like I saved Rose from the rain, and you saved both of us by taking us in. We have spent our lives saving each other, over and over." "And I would do it again," Isaac said. "In every lifetime I would choose you." Grusha leaned against him, and they sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear. Inside, Thomas called them for dinner, and they rose together, hand in hand, and went to join their son. The farm that Isaac had built alone had become a home full of love and laughter and hope. The orc woman he had found in the rain had become his wife, his partner, his heart. The abandoned baby they had saved together had grown into a woman who was helping to build a better world. It was not the life Isaac had planned. It was not the safe, quiet existence he had imagined when he left the military. But it was so much more, so much better than anything he could have dreamed. And as he sat down to dinner with his family, with Grusha on one side and Thomas on the other, with roses, laughter echoing in his memory and the promise of grandchildren yet to come. Isaac Pemberton knew that he was the luckiest man alive. Because he had found love in a storm, had built a family from impossible odds, and had helped prove that peace was possible even in a world defined by conflict. He had looked past fear and prejudice to see the person beneath, and that person had become his everything. The journey had not been easy. There had been danger, sacrifice, and countless challenges. But every moment had been worth it for the warmth of home, the love of family, and the knowledge that they had made the world just a little bit better. As Grusha passed him the bread and smiled at him with those amber eyes full of love, Isaac smiled back and thought about that rainy day so many years ago when he had made the choice to help instead of riding past. It was the best decision he had ever made, and he would never regret it. Their story was one of hope in darkness, of love transcending boundaries, of two people from different worlds finding their way to each other and building something beautiful together. And though the world around them would continue to change and grow, though there would always be new challenges to face, Isaac and Grusha would face them together, just as they always had. Together, they were strong enough to weather any storm. Together, they were proof that a better future was possible. And together, they had found the happiness that both had believed was impossible, a happiness built on love, trust, and the courage to choose compassion over fear. As the evening deepened, and the family lingered over dinner, sharing stories and laughter, Isaac looked around the table at the people he loved and knew that this was what mattered. Not the prejudices of others, not the difficulties they had overcome, but this family, love, and the home they had built together. The orc woman who had refused to leave a baby in the rain had also refused to leave Isaac's side through all the years that followed. She had been his partner in every sense, his equal in all things, and the love of his life. And he had been hers, the human who had chosen kindness, who had seen past her green skin and tusks to the beautiful person within. Their love story had started in a storm, born of desperation and compassion. But it had grown into something magnificent, something that had changed not just their own lives but the lives of everyone around them. They had proved that love knew no boundaries, that family was defined by choice, not blood, and that peace was always worth fighting for. And as the night settled over their farm, with their son clearing the dishes and Grusha's hand warm in his, Isaac knew that their story was far from over. There were still grandchildren to spoil, crops to plant, peace to build, and countless days to spend by Grusha's side. He had found an orc woman shielding a baby in the rain, and she had said it was not hers, but she would not leave it. And in that moment, though neither of them knew it then, their futures had become intertwined. They had saved each other, loved each other, and built a life together that was richer and fuller than either could have imagined. It was a good life, a life worth living, a life worth fighting for, and it was theirs, now and always, until the end of their days and beyond.